Hey
Hello,
Sean,
Pooja.
how's it going?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great, yeah. This is going to be a really fun session because I feel like we're going to be talking about some really interesting things today. Lots of different workspaces we'll dive into, API workflows. Yeah, so I know that you've worked on a lot of different interesting things here at Postman. For those of you who don't know, I recently started at Postman not too long ago, about 2 months ago. And Sean has been around for a bit. Yeah,
Yeah, that is a fair way to describe it. I feel like I'm a seasoned veteran at this point. I've been
yeah.
here about a year and a half, I think.
Hmm.
Um, Arlemy is saying hi. I can't tell what that emoji is. Can you see who or what that emoji is, Pooja? I just see like the wave.
Yeah,
Hello.
I just see like some girl going like this.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
um, but
cool. So
yeah,
you want to introduce yourself? You kind of gave us a bit of an intro there, but tell everyone because this is I think maybe your second stream with us.
yeah, yeah. So this
Cool.
is
Yeah.
my
So
second.
tell everyone who you are.
Yeah, so this is my second stream. I think the first stream I did with Ian, we did the API blindfold challenge. So I am a developer advocate here with Sean, and I recently joined and I'm excited to, work with different types of features with Postman. I've worked in the DevRel world for a bit, but it's always exciting to work, especially with Postman, since it's like such a commonly used tool. And I think this idea of today is just to kind of reiterate on some things that we've already, maybe some of you already know, or some flows and interesting ways to kind of do things. So yeah, I think that's kind of the idea here. So that's one thing I think when I first joined is like just learning about, using Postman in such interesting ways. I had initially known when I first started with Postman, I had worked with it back in like 2017 when I was like a API automation test engineer, and I
That
was
is a wordy title.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
was testing APIs, and I mainly used it as like a HTTP client just sending requests. But I think even in like the few months that I've been here, I've noticed that it's just grown so much as a product, and there's just so many different ways to use the product. So yeah, I guess that's what I wanted to dive in today. As we go through the stream. So yeah, I think there's someone that says, "Hey, Lionel." Yeah, he's excited about this chat.
Yeah.
Excited about for this um, stream. So I think we should kind of dive right in. So, did
I'll just intro myself
oh
quickly
yeah,
as well.
yeah, sure.
So yeah. Hey everyone, I am Sean. I've been on the stream a few times. Like I said, I've been at Postman for a year and a half. And like Pooja, also a developer advocate. And yeah, I think before we dive in, Pooja, we'd like to do just a quick, in case you missed it. So I'm just gonna,
Sure.
before we give people
Yeah,
the
for
meat of
sure.
the show, let's give them some of the fun logistical things that they might have missed. Not even logistical,
Definitely.
just like features and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm just going to share a quick blog post that came out recently from our very own Kin Lane, and I'm going to share my screen here. Um, so I will put our faces in here. But yeah, so it is Kin Lane is chief evangelist here at Postman. And I really just always love these. I know right now I'm just showing the picture because I think it's so cool and so cute. I
Hmm.
think we have an awesome graphic team. But yeah, so 5 ways an API platform boosts productivity and efficiency across your org. So Kin is a very prolific writer, puts out all sorts of cool and interesting things, both Postman related and not. He's a celebrity, I think is a fair way to describe Kin's role in the API world.
Hmm.
So I always appreciate everything that Kin writes. And yeah, so this is a great blog just talking about, like it says in the title, right? Some of the ways to boost productivity and efficiency across your work. So feel free to check that out. That is a new blog post. And if you're interested in the blog itself, you can just click this blog button here and this will take you to our blog homepage.
Hmm.
So yeah, just wanted to get that out there so folks can check that out. But yeah, I'm going to pull this off. And yeah, so Pooja, I think before we start showing folks, workspaces and everything, let's give maybe like a high level overview of kind of what we're going to be talking about today, some of the goals and what folks can hope to take away by the end of today's stream.
Yeah, for sure. So today's stream is actually a really interesting stream because we're going to be talking a little bit about API workflows. So if you guys think about what API workflows are, Sean, do you have any thoughts on API workflows? Like what they might be?
Yeah. So, when I think of API workflows, well, I think I'll kind of start back to, what you were talking about before and how you used, Postman just as like an HTTP client to test, an endpoint, right? And so it was like a pretty basic, I want to see what, random API X does. And I'll click the blue send button in Postman, have it then a response back. And that's like really how a lot of people think of when they use Postman, especially a few years ago. But what's nice now is this ability to come up with more advanced workflows. And truly, when I think of a workflow, I think of like a series of actions or a series of steps and parts of the process that all kind of happen together or sequentially, rather than being such a one at a time thing. For lack of a better. Oh, my Apple Watch is talking to me. But yeah, right. So it's this idea of, okay, I want to do X, and then I also want this next thing to happen. And then once that happens, maybe I have some conditional logic to then go do something else.
Definitely.
And yeah, so we're going to work through some things. And that's kind of like my idea. If you want to add on to, like workflow.
Yeah, I also think of workflows as like how to use multiple different APIs as well. So I think some of the things that I found so interesting when working with workflows is like, how can I call different API requests and kind of chain them together to make some sort of interesting application? And what I found through this process that it's like the possibilities are really endless if you know what you're looking for. And usually like one API's data is actually a prerequisite for another one. And so I think that like being able to like effectively chain those together and seeing what you kind of get at the end is really interesting. So yeah, I think we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. And I think, at Postman, what I've noticed is that we've created a lot of interesting things. So I think the first place to kind of start, if our attendees haven't seen this before, is kind of sharing the Postman public workspaces. So I'm going to actually pull those up. I don't know if you can share my screen.
Yeah, I will pull it up. So I'm going to move the chat for now, just so we have some more real estate. But obviously, we are very much reading and want to hear what folks say. So David said that he got a notification. Happy to be here. Awesome. Happy to have you, David. And hopefully, you learned some stuff. And if there's anything that seems interesting, like everyone in the chat, feel free to let us know. Would you mind zooming in one more time, Pooja?
Yeah. Can you see that okay?
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I know it gets a little bit clunky on your end being so zoomed in, but it's helpful.
Yeah. So I think I wanted to start off just kind of like sharing this workspace because it's a really great workspace. It's called the Published Postman Templates workspace. And these are all public workspaces. I think anyone, if you Google Published Postman Templates, you'll be able to see this workspace. And we're going to be diving into some of the collections in here and kind of breaking some of these down. But essentially, these templates are collections that Postmanauts have created, and a lot of them have to do with API workflows. But they're all really interesting. They all have interesting use cases. Like, for example, I think this cat URL one gets, like different cat URLs, but it does it with it kind of talks about how to like scale and deploy web applications with like Docker, Kubernetes, and also how to deploy things locally. So this is a really interesting one. What's your favorite workspace in here, Sean?
My favorite workspace. Ooh, put me on the spot.
Or collection. Favorite collection.
Oh yeah, favorite collection. I mean, I'm slightly biased towards one that I put together, just because I know it well and it was fun to put together. Let's see. I'm looking through quick, and if folks see names that they're curious about, let us know. You can also, I dropped this link in the chat. So if you want to check out any of these, go for it. So before I answer, I'm going to pull up this question from Sima Zargar. This is a great question. So is this stream about workspaces or workflows? Very much about work. Go ahead. You want to take it, Pooja?
Yeah, so I was thinking it's very much about workflows, but we're going to be sharing interesting workspaces. So this is kind of the stream where we're going to share all the content. So if you want to go ahead and dive deeper on your own, but we'll be sharing the workflows as well. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think, just to add on to that, right? Like the reason we're showing a workspace right now is because this is basically a whole group. Like this is a great resource to find workflows that have already been built. So we're just kind of showing a resource where we can, rather than like reinvent the wheel right now, we're just going to show you some workflows that have already been built.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll say there's one. Do we want to talk about the water my rooftop one? I think that one's actually a pretty cool example.
This one's a really cool example. So this this collection, I actually wanted to dive deeper into this one and what it kind of does. But essentially the way that this collection works, water my rooftop plants, what we can do here is this collection, what it does is it has some endpoint that is connected to some hygrometer, which tells you like essentially like what the
moisture level.
Yeah, the moisture level in like if you had a plant, right, and it kind of tells you like what the moisture level in the soil is. So this is an interesting workflow because what it does here is that it kind of determines like what the day is today, and it also tells you like what kind of moisture level this is. So maybe we should run this workflow to kind of get a deeper insight. So essentially, for those of you who don't know, if you're interested in trying some of these things out, what you can do is you can actually fork these collections. So when you click on create a fork, you can choose which location you would want it in. So you can create like some of your own workspaces. And then you can, choose your fork level. So here, what I've done is I've actually forked this collection, and I know it has an existing environment variable associated to it as well. So I actually have this right now in my API workflows workspace. So if we take a little look at like kind of how this works a little bit at a high level.
Sorry, Pooja, can you zoom in again here? I think now that you switched to the app, it wasn't zoomed in. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you see this better now?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So what I've done here is that, so this is a GET request here. So this hygrometer, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. What it does is it gets the moisture level of your quote unquote soil. And this is, I think, a little bit of a dummy application. But what I have here is I have the environment variable, and this application is running on Heroku right now. So this is the endpoint that we can hit. So before running this collection, what it's doing, it's basically making sure that the environment variables and keys are present. So it's kind of doing a check for that. And it's setting this initially like to 0, right? And then what it's doing is we're going to kind of work to build like a monitor on this for this to run over time. But at a very basic level, it has basically this workflow that if the moisture level is greater than or equal to I guess 0.75, it's going to basically skip, it's going to keep I guess like it's not going to water the plants. So the water the plants request is this one. So this one is like the post watering the plants. So this basically tells you that you have watered your plants. And the way to run that request is if uh, if the water moisture is less than, I guess, 50, it will run the next request. So essentially what we have here is like if we're running this, like, just doing one request, this is obviously the moisture level is pretty high, so we don't need to send this request. So essentially what this particular workflow kind of does is that you can run it through a monitor over a set of time, so that over time you can see that your application or uh, your soil density, I think, or moisture will kind of dry up over time. And when that happens, you can run the following request. So does that kind of sense for this, I guess, this workflow?
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
a good description. And so this is, I think, a good example of right.
Hmm.
In this case, we're talking about collections
Hmm.
themselves. Excuse me, being a workflow, right? And we
Yeah.
can see that there was kind of some logic based on if the water meter is X, do something, and if it's
Hmm.
not, do something different.
Right.
Right. And so this is a very basic workflow. So this
Yeah.
is, I think, a good example, right, of like what we're going to talk about in terms of building blocks for
Hmm.
API workflows.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so I want to take a second to look at some of the comments here from Ashit. Says someone should add the Rick and Morty API collection to this workspace. I also love that collection. That one, I'm not sure if it's as much of a workflow as much as just a fun API.
Yeah.
Because I think it just gets like cool Rick and Morty information.
Hmm.
Um, are you familiar with that show, Pooja?
Yeah, it's kind of a
Yeah.
goofy show.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I love
Um,
I love in that one though, if you search for, for anyone familiar with the show, if you search for like characters named Rick, it brings back like 100 different characters because there's all sorts of like bizarre characters in there.
yeah. Awesome.
Um,
The one thing I wanted to show with this workflow is actually monitors. So I was thinking, maybe like since this particular workflow is so much about, like it's actually checking like day and time and which days you can skip, you can actually create a monitor for this. So the one thing that what you can do here is like if you create a monitor, and I guess you can create like monitor names, so like water my plants.
yeah. So Pooja, I just want to just
Yeah.
say we do have a comment. So this is kind of like perfect timing, right? So from Pranjali, they said that they're a backend developer. Wanted to see if we could explain mock servers or monitors.
Yeah.
And so yeah, this is a perfect time for we'll get into like what monitors are. We're probably not going to cover mocks a ton, but
Hmm.
Pooja's about to build this monitor for us, which is essentially just a scheduled way to run a
Hmm.
collection. So Pranjali, check it out, what Pooja's sending, and I'll drop some information for, if you want to learn more about monitors in the chat. So yeah, go for it, Pooja. I just wanted to point
Cool.
that out. And then
Yeah.
lastly, one other quick comment. Tayyab is saying, who are these sessions for? Really anybody. These are supposed to be fun, learning streams, right? So we have a different stream every week. In this case, we're just going to go through some API workflows. So
Yeah.
for you, Tayyab. Cool.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, like Sean said, so monitors allow you to kind of schedule these things, like you can run a collection on a scheduled basis. So like if you had a workflow like something like the water my plants one where you're checking like every day like what like the status is of something, you can create a monitor to kind of set that off and trigger those requests. So to do this, it's pretty simple with Postman. We have a monitors tab here. You can create a monitor. So here I can like select the collection that I'm interested in, which is the water my rooftop plants. Current, I can set the environment. So I actually have an environment for this. This environment like has like my endpoints as well. And it has like, water durations as well. And I can actually, where did I go? Did I lose my monitor? Oh, I'd never create. Oh, there we go. I think I have to create it again. And yeah, so you can set your environments, and then you can actually set like how often you want to run it, whether it's like a weekly thing, like an everyday thing, you know, or if you want to set like an hourly thing, like every 2 hours or so. And you can set where you want to like send your notifications for this. And you can also like set like where you are interested in sending it. So when you create this monitor, essentially it's going to notify you, and you can like run this monitor over time. And you can kind of see these requests kind of run periodically. So this was one example of like how to kind of build out this workflow connected to a monitor. But what's like another interesting example? You could, I guess, like, you know, Sean and I have worked with Twitter quite often. So I wanted to show some Twitter-based workflows, but I'm sure you could create a monitor that like, if this type of tweet is sent with some sort of hashtag, you know, notify this user or something like that. So I think we could get really interestingly creative with monitors here as well. So yeah, that's definitely, this is one example of a workflow. Any thoughts here, Sean?
No, yeah, I think that's, you know, a good example, right? Again,
Mhm.
this is, in this case, we're talking about a collection as a workflow. And you know, what monitors do nicely is just allow us to kind of set it and forget it, right? Like it'll run however often we set it for. And I don't know, it sounded like you were teeing me up to talk about a collection
Twitter?
that I might have built that I think is
Yeah.
a cool collection. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you want to jump right into that one, and then we can show more stuff afterwards?
For sure, for sure.
All right. Awesome.
So I will pull up this comment from Santosh. Do we have this monitor in Newman as well? Yeah, you have the ability to you know, run and schedule things using Newman. So Newman, for those that are not familiar, it's the command line. Excuse me, command line runner for Postman, and so everything that you can do in the UI, you can also do with Newman.
Yeah, with Newman. Actually, you know what? This is a great tee up to showcase Newman. Before we jump into the Twitter stuff, let me show you how you can use Newman. So if you're interested in using Newman, what you can do is you can actually export some of these collections out. So if once you export them, that's one way to run it. So here I've exported these like in my desktop. Let me see if I can bring my terminal up. Okay, cool. So let's say you wanted to run this collection. So if I do, can you see my screen? Is it big enough, Sean?
Yeah, that should, yeah, that's good.
All right, so if I wanted to run this collection with Newman, what I can do is I can actually, you know, run this collection, point to wherever my collection is. And this collection particularly has this environment variable. So I'm going to actually add this environment variable onto it as well. So if I run this, what you'll see is that I was able to run this request like one time. So see that it was executed. I got, you know, my information here. If I wanted to run this multiple times, there's actually a lot of interesting flags with Newman that you can use. So if you haven't like worked with Newman before, you can definitely check out Newman's command line options here and take a look at some of the flags that we have seen here. So for example, like E is environment variable. So N is like number of iterations. So let's say if we want to run this like maybe 5 or 6 times to see, you know, how this kind of works. So so let's say we run this 5 times. So you're able to run your collection that way as well in multiple different iterations as well. So like, for example, like by running this, you can see like some other requests have been run as well. I think another interesting thing about Newman is also like the reporters. So for example, like I'm running this with the CLI tool, but if I wanted to use like an HTML reporter, I can actually tag on some sort of like path as well. And so like Newman, if you go into like their postmanlabs.newman, you can see that you can run using CLI, you can run using some sort of Newman library and using reporters with Newman. So one word that I actually really like is this one, HTML extra reporter. And what you'll need to do is you just need to install this reporter wherever you've installed Newman, and you can actually run this particular Newman by just adding that reporter flag, I guess, onto it. So like, for example, if I were to run this and then do -r and then do HTML extra, oops. Is that right?
So it's hidden. It's a little bit hidden behind your name. If you could scooch up the bottom of the terminal, just like so it doesn't go all the way to the bottom of your screen, I could see it better.
Sure. Yeah. So scooch this up.
Also, I don't know if Danny Dayton's watching, but huge shout out to Danny Dayton for the HTML reporter or HTML extra reporter. I think it's over 2 million downloads now. Really, just a really neat way to visualize. And we'll see. No spoilers yet, but just a really awesome way to visualize the collection run from Newman.
Yeah, so I actually just added that flag right here. So I think that worked. So now if I go to my Newman folder, that's where all of my, I guess all my reporters are created. So if I just open one, oops, what are my rooftop plans? Yeah, I've created so many.
Calls out Danny Dayton for napping now.
Yeah.
Is it like 4:30 over there? Is it that's past the siesta time?
Yeah. So I can see that like these are like, this is another way that I've seen how these are run. So you can actually get like the entire like collection descriptions and like all the requests and the summaries here, like also like data received. So this is an interesting way to kind of get that kind of all of the iterations of like what your tests were and how they've passed. And so this is I think like Newman's a great way if you're doing testing, so if you have like a bunch of APIs and you're like doing testing for validation and things like that, you can get like an entire report. So maybe this particular workflow is not the best to use for Newman, but I just wanted to show like this is how you would be able to run it. So yeah. And I think that's pretty much it. I think like, obviously this shows an example of exporting out your collection, but if you're interested in just using like a Postman API instead of exporting out collection locally, what you can do as well is take a look at this workspace. So this is the Postman public workspace, and this has like the Postman API. So Sean, I know the Postman API is like pretty awesome. You can do a lot of really interesting things with it. So I feel like the one way that I like using it is just like, getting information about like the collections I've created. So for example, if I use this like get single collection, so let me show you, I guess, right here. So with the Postman API, if I wanted to run the collection using this API call, so if I wanted to run the water my rooftop collections, what I would need to do is basically I can run this collection and basically add the collection UUID. So that's a specific ID to your collection. So in my case, my water my rooftop plants is this collection. And if I wanted to get that collection ID, I would just click on this info button, and you can see that this is a very unique ID to that collection. So that Postman API actually gets all the information for that specific collection. And then if you tag on your API key as well, so your Postman API key as a parameter, so like, add your Postman API key, it should append it right here. What you can do is you can actually run, do Newman run, and then this request get your collection ID with your API key, and it should also be able to run your request that way. And that allows you to use Newman without exporting it out. So that's a really interesting another way to kind of run with Newman as well. So yeah, any thoughts there, Sean?
Yeah. So like another thing I'll point out, you know, with Newman is you don't technically have to export it. You're able to, you know, because, you know, Postman in the web has a specific link for each collection, each request, and everything like that. You can just use the link, right? So instead of having like a local file, it's totally fine to have a local file, but if you want it to, you know, say your collection is being updated every day or something like that, you don't necessarily want to have to like export it and then like run it that way. You could just have the link to it. And that's one way to run, you know, I think just like a more dynamic way, just like have the link. So that is a cool thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I guess that's what helps you kind of create CI/CD pipelines, right? So if your tests are being updated consistently, if your things are happening dynamic, like if you're getting data dynamically, when you're exporting, that's a snapshot in time of your collection. So if you're using a snapshot in time, you have to be exporting at a consistent pace if you're trying to get some dynamic data. So running it with like the Postman API, I guess, lets you kind of keep, you know, keep your collection up to date per se. So I guess that's an interesting way to do that. So, but yeah, I hope that kind of gives a little bit more insight on monitors, Newman for any of you guys who are following along. I think we should dive into some of the Twitter stuff. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few comments that I want to touch on. Right. So Tom McCowan says Postman is a CLI worth the price of admission for today. Awesome. Right. And I think this is like, I'm glad that this was, you know, informative and useful, Tom. I think this is a good example of what Pooja was talking about earlier, where, you know, it's like people don't necessarily know all the things that, you know, Postman has available. And so that's, you know, partially why we do these streams, that people can come across these things. Unit testing and API in Postman. Yeah, certainly. Drop my thing. Certainly possible. We have all sorts of resources on testing and various ways you can test. So I'm happy to drop in some information in there. We're probably not going to get a ton into unit testing today, Nagesh, but you know, if you check out our YouTube page or our Learning Center docs, which I can pass information on, there's you know, quite a bit of information. So it's also a valuable tool for that. And the following comment was from Ika. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Sorry if I got it wrong, but mentioned that their company uses Postman for API services testing. So that's an answer to Nagesh's question, right? So people are using it. And then one other question or comment that kind of popped up was from Ferris saying, is it possible to have multiple collections on one monitor? And the answer here is no. Each monitor is going to be specific to a certain collection. But, you know, what you can do is add in like as many requests as you want into a collection and programmatically control the workflow that way. So you can have that. You can also build, you know, you can use Newman or you can create a workflow that has different workflows. And if you have like a CI/CD pipeline, you can run multiple collections. So it just depends a bit how you want to go about it there, but each monitor is going to correspond to one collection.
Yeah.
Let's see. So here's another question. Felix asked, can Postman test be included in a CI/CD pipeline for backend applications? The answer here is yeah, right? Like you can, we didn't really add too many tests in our, you know, this is again, just like a very basic, like, should I do this? Should I not? Right. And there are some tests and you saw like, you know, when we ran the reporter, or even when we didn't, right? When we ran just like the regular collection, it showed us the tests. And
I mean, just to dive really quickly into tests, like, especially like, if you're interested in like just very basic tests. Like we have all these snippets on the side. So for example, like if you wanted to test that you get like a status code of 200, this is a test right here. And that, you know, when I send this request, what I'm expecting is, you know, I can see that my, like I can also see like specific, where's the test tab? Am I in that? Oh yeah, right here, test results. Yeah. So I can see that, like, you know, I can see that these tests have passed here as well. So that's an interesting way. Like you can do a lot of validation, for example, for example, like, you know, like if you're a response body, you can validate that to have some sort of data back. You can like do tests that, like, you know, like you're expected to have some sort of string. So a lot of the tests that you might be interested in when it comes to validating, a lot of them are available here as snippets. And these let you kind of build on and get a little bit more creative of like how you want to kind of test some of the things you're interested in. So yeah, so there's that, of course, as well. Yep.
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I think that's a whole just kind of intro to Newman, to testing. And yeah, I think now I'm happy to take over and show one of the, you know, cool collections that I built that, you know, is what I would consider an API workflow.
Definitely. That sounds good. All right.
Yeah.
Do you want to share your screen?
I'll pull your screen off. I'm going to get the right stuff up on mine. So for now, it's just our faces. Awesome. So give me just a sec. What's going on over there, Pooja? It sounds like a printer is going off.
Yeah, I think a printer is going off right now.
Yeah.
On my end, sorry.
Gotcha. Okay, so here is, oh, and we might have lost Pooja. So it's just me for the second. But yeah, I'll zoom in here. I'm going to show a basic API workflow that I built. So it's, you know, again, just in this collection form. In this case, it's going to be 4 requests. And my goal, oh, hello, welcome back. My goal was to just build, I had this project where I was, you know, we had our Postman Galaxy event. And I'd been at Postman for a few months, and we basically wanted to get, you know, we created this Twitter hashtag for the event, and we wanted to make sure that we had all the information and all the tweets that people were saying about the event, able to get them into like some spot where everyone could like read them and see what was being said about the event. So that was my goal. And of course, I wanted to use Postman to solve this issue. And so that's what I did. Without really knowing it, I created an API workflow, which hits multiple different APIs. Oh, Pooja, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind? So David is saying Learning Center docs link. While I'm going through this, would you mind popping in some documentation on what I forget what we promised folks. I made all these promises about sending links, and then I totally forgot.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you wouldn't mind popping those in, that'd be great. But yeah, so that was my goal, right? Was to create some sort of workflow that people from Postman could see the events, or see the tweets from the event. So I'm not going to go through the entirety of it, but I will explain it here. So basically what it does, right, here's the collection, Twitter hashtag search. And if you want to find it, this is also available in that initial Postman published templates. So you just come down to Twitter hashtag search here. You can fork it. And this is basically what I did. I just have already gone through the setup process, so it's not as you know, lengthy. You don't have to watch me sit here and do the setup part. You can just see the fun takeaways from it. So this is basically what's happening, right? I am searching Twitter for a hashtag. So you can see that the first API I'm hitting is the Twitter API. In this case, right, I'm going to search for the for crypto hashtag. And I know crypto, we've talked about it. The only reason I chose it here is I know there's going to be tons of people talking about crypto stuff, and we're getting a bunch of like new tweets. But we can, what search, do you have anything more interesting than crypto? What's something we should search for? But it's got to be like something popular.
Are APIs popular? I think we can search for APIs. I don't know how often we get.
That's the thing. Yeah, I searched for puppies before, and it was like there was not as many puppy tweets as I thought. Let's search for.
I think crypto is pretty good.
All right, yeah, let's just go with crypto. I know people will be tweeting about it, so we'll get fresh tweets.
Yeah.
The environment. Yeah, people probably do tweet about that, aren't we? Okay, so yeah, that's basically what we're doing here. And then followed up the environment with a sad face.
Summer Game Fest.
Summer Game Fest. We can search for that.
Yeah.
Let's see what comes up. Is that an event that's going on right now? I don't know. So I am going to actually go into something. Well, before I send it, I'll walk through what it does, right? So it hits the Twitter API and gets all the tweets that have been tweeted with Summer Game Fest hashtag. Then the next thing I did was I wanted to get all of these tweets and send them somewhere so that my team could see them, right? So the next part of this workflow was to take these and send them somewhere. In this case, I wanted to send them to Slack. And you can see in this case, it's just a Slack webhook URL. And that's the endpoint that allows Slack to kind of be programmatically accessed. And so what I'm going to do is take these tweets and push them to a Slack channel that I've already designated and set up. And then there's a few more like kind of housekeeping items that are part of the workflow. Because the way this ran on a monitor every 5 minutes because I wanted to constantly get the newest tweets. And so to do that, what's nice about Twitter is I go back to this request for a second and I'll click send so we can see what comes back. And I'm going to just give ourselves some more space here. You can see, awesome, right? Here are the tweets that come back from, we should see Summer Game Fest. So thank you, Lionel, for providing us this. Oh, so somehow replacing E3. I remember when I first heard about E3, it was just this, if you're not familiar, it's just like massive, I forget what it stands for, Electronics Entertainment Expo, maybe. But yeah, it's a pretty cool event if you're into video games. But so what comes back from this is you get this ID. And the way Twitter API works is every tweet has an ID and it just like gets higher and higher for each tweet. So like you can basically say like, I only want tweets now that are higher than this. So I'll get the freshest, newest tweets. So that's what I'm tracking. And so to go back now, the reason that I want to do these two things where I'm like working with my Postman environment is here, like this is what Pooja talked about before, where we're using the Postman API, right? So now I'm already using 3 different APIs in this workflow for this project. And what's happening here is I'm really just capturing the environment name. And I'm not going to like go through this in detail because I want to make sure we do other stuff too. But I'm capturing the environment that I was using in Postman, and then I'm updating it with the highest ID so that I know when the monitor runs next time, I'm only going to be getting the newest tweets. So that's kind of what it looks like in a nutshell. And we just saw me search for Summer Game Fest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear out this highest ID, and I'm going to make these secret so you can't see all of my things that I've already just shown you. I should have done this before, but I was testing it out. So I'm going to delete highest tweet ID for now, and we'll just see this run in action. All right, so I'm going to come back to the collection. Again, I'm just going to minimize all this stuff so I have some more space. And let's actually, wait, here we go. So here's the run button. And I'm going to click this run Twitter hashtag search, but I'm going to give myself some more room here. And I'm going to pull up a Slack channel that I've made. Okay, so here's Slack. Here is my Learning Center. You can see I was getting stuff before. I think these were crypto tweets that I was looking for. Yeah, so right, so here's crypto tweets. So now let's run it for the Twitter hashtag search for these. All right, so I'm going to click run Twitter hashtag search. and we're going to see all these new Summer Game Fest tweets come in.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was a good query, Lionel.
Yeah, that was super helpful. You can see there are still some things that I haven't changed from like the initial collection. Like right now it's saying Postman Galaxy tweet. That's just hard coded in. Like I could change that easily. But let's see how often people are tweeting about this event. So if I were to run this again, I'm not sure if there's going to be new tweets or not. So let's see. Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. So this is truly a happening event because there are people tweeting like crazy. So yeah, that was an incredibly helpful hashtag from Lionel. But yeah, so that was, again, the reason I'm showing this is because it is, an API workflow, kind of like Pooja mentioned earlier, where it's, I'm making use of multiple APIs to solve this, to come up with a solution for this project of like wanting to get all of these tweets. And, if I was to run programmatically, obviously it's not scalable for me to sit here and just click run again over and over every time I want to get new tweets. So this is where, like Pooja mentioned before, we can set up a monitor and have this run every 5 minutes and get the freshest tweets. You can also this is where it's really nice that you can control the logic, because if there are, and I'm so zoomed in, so it's hard to go here, but let me just pull this up. So you can see that you're able to, this is the code that just kind of like handles all of this. And this is where you can kind of programmatically make use of your workflow. And so it says basically, if the first part of this if statement is if there's data. So if I scroll back up, it says if there's data. So if, from the Zoom is chef's kiss. Thank you. I'm glad it's visible to people, but it is tough to use. So zoomed in. But yeah, so I'm saying if I have data, do all this stuff, do all this data manipulation, get it into a format that I can, send over to Slack. And if not, I'm setting the next request to null, meaning don't go through all the things. Don't post anything to Slack. Don't update the environment ID because it doesn't make sense to. And so, this is kind of like that conditional logic where I can control the workflow, and it's really nice. And the last thing I'll show, because I think it's helpful, and I spent a lot of time making this diagram because it's my first diagram. This is essentially what's happening, right? Like we're getting the tweets that have the hashtag. We're looking at the response, formatting data. And if there's data, right, we're going to send that to Slack. Is there more? We loop back and send it again. Is there more tweets? Yep. Loop back and go through this process. And if there's not more tweets, then we just update everything so that the next time this monitor runs, it will only get us the newest tweets.
Yeah. So no, this is pretty cool. And actually we have a comment, I think it's from Takashi. She's like, by playing with Postman, I'm sure it brings up new ideas to create great apps. And I mean, I guess this is the point of this stream, is to show you guys like all the different things you can build with it. And all of these collections, they exist on that public workspace. So if you want to play around with that on your own, feel free to fork these collections. Try some of these out and play with them on your own as well. So yeah, no, this is really cool. And so the one thing that you did here was you connected it to Slack. So I know with Postman, you can also connect with webhooks too. So is that how you kind of made that connection as well, Sean?
So for this one, yeah, like Tom said, definitely been underutilizing Postman. I think Pooja and I both had this same exact thought when we joined, right? It's like, oh yeah, Postman, like I know how to use it. I know all the things that it does. And then just constantly figure out new things that you can do. So that is a common thought, Tom. So that's a fun part of this stream is like showcasing some of the learning things that we've done. But yeah, so Pooja asked if I was using webhooks. In a sense, I'm more making use of Slack's webhooks than I am with like the Postman ability to use webhooks.
Mhm.
Right. So because I am able to, I'm about to sneeze. I'm going to mute myself. Give me 1 second.
Bless you.
Thank you. I was like, oh, I can feel this coming. I can feel this coming. But yeah, so Postman does have support for webhooks. So that is something that you can make use of. And it's, one of multiple protocols that Postman's able to support and send requests to. And I'm happy to like send some information on that. But yeah, it's not like a huge part of this workflow.
Mhm.
But yeah, certainly something, if you want to use it, is possible.
Yeah, awesome. So if anyone doesn't know, well, I guess I didn't know this, but when you join Postman or become a Postmanaut, there's like a rite of passage which you have to go through, which is your first collection. So was this your first collection, Sean?
This was not my first one, but it was early
Oh,
on in the process for me.
okay. Well, it's interesting that you use Twitter because for my first collection, I also used Twitter. And I feel like Twitter is such a versatile, interesting API platform. So I was thinking I would dive a little bit into like my first collection as well, because I feel like you use Twitter to get like search hashtags, but I actually use Twitter to find the location of all of my teammates. So I wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that as well, and kind of go down that road if that works. Yeah.
Yeah, show it off. Yeah.
All right, cool. So let me share my screen again. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. It looks like it was up for a second in here,
Okay.
but then yeah,
All
here.
right.
Okay, I got you.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
All right. So can you see my screen now?
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. All right. So I actually use Twitter in a completely different use case. I use Twitter to kind of find where everyone kind of lives globally. So if you guys that don't know, but Postman's like
Creeper.
well, I know I guess it was kind of creepy, but in a way, like we all work remotely, we all live around the world, and I
Yeah.
felt like making a collection helped me like get closer to people. I don't know, it was weird, but that was the idea behind this collection, is just to kind of like visualize where everyone is. So this is another feature. You can actually do a lot of interesting visualizations with Postman as well. So this is the visualization I built. At the time I was living in Washington, D.C. I've recently moved to Chicago. And so I wanted to kind of visualize where all my teammates were. So this collection is also part of the Postman public workspaces. So you can feel free to take a look at wherever that is. I can't find it. Oh, right here in the published templates. Right here as well. So visualizing Postmanauts. And then if you're interested in Sean's, his is the Twitter hashtag search as well. So ideally with this collection, what I was thinking of doing is I thought about building workflows in like 3 different ways, kind of to show the same kind of way to do things. Because that's the one thing that I got out of Postman, is like there's so many different ways to do the same thing that you're interested in. So when I had initially working with this flow, what I did was I found this API that basically gets like this API. What it does is it gets the user by username. So in the body, in the params of this request, what you can do is there's this thing called the user field, and Twitter has like all of these values. So based on like the username that you're interested in, so this is my Twitter username, you can get all of this different data. So for example, you can get when it was created at, you can get like, image data, I think, and you can get location data. So for those of you who are interested on like, how do you get location data? So I think when you have a Twitter profile, you can set your location data as like one of your location. It will get that for you from there. So, so when I run this request, what I'm doing here is I am getting all of my, my Twitter data. So I can get my description, I can get my name, I can get my location. And what I did here was I actually wanted to use this really interesting way to set environment variables. And this is how I created this flow. So I initially created an object for my user. So I created my name, and then I got my location. And then I set my latitude and longitude as null because those are things that I'm going to want to get from another API. So, so here, what I'm doing is I'm setting an object, and when you are setting an object, what you'll have to do is you actually have to stringify that JSON. So my colleague Ian, he wrote this really awesome blog, and it's like, it was really helpful for me to learn how to use variables by using like JSON serialization in Postman. So essentially what you do is if you have some data, you might need to stringify it to set it as like a variable. And when you stringify, it's usually when you have like an array. So you can't, I guess, set an array as a variable, but when you stringify it, you can set that whole, what it does is it turns that array into a string, and then you can parse that string back into an array when you're reutilizing it. So that's basically that's the methods I used when I created this request. So essentially when I send this request, I have this object in here. So as you can see, my name and my location is set, but then my longitude and latitude is set as null. So now I created this other request. So initially I thought, let me do this first individually, and then let me see how I can build this workflow, optimize it. So I did something similar here where now that I had the location, I use this API, Position Stacks API. So this lets me do some forward geocoding. So if I add a query, if I have like some sort of location, I can use Position Stack to get that location's longitude and latitude. So if I click send here, same thing here, I'm adding now. So what I'm doing is I'm parsing that object, and from the API, I'm getting the longitude and latitude from Position Stacks API. So if I got my location from Twitter, I can get my launch lat from another API here. So once I have that, what I can do here is I can set that. I set my location in a pre-request script. So I should set whatever my location was from Twitter, and I add that to my query parameter here. And then after that, I can parse out the launch lat and add that back into my object. That's right here. So now if you see what my object looks like, you can see that my longitude and latitude has also been updated. So then I was like, okay, now that I got my location and longitude, latitude, of course I can just, map myself on a map with that. But I also wanted to get the weather as well. I was like, why not, loop in another API here? So I was like, okay, let me get the weather. So I use
Let's see how everyone's living. Let's see
let's
if
see what the
greener
weather.
sky, bluer skies
Exactly.
anywhere else.
Yeah, let's see what the weather is in everyone's location. So this was just something fun that I wanted to do. So I found this open weather API that also takes it takes longitude and latitude to then give me weather data. So I guess you can see how this workflow is being created. So Twitter gives me location, Position Stack gives me longitude and latitude, and then open weather takes longitude and latitude to give me weather. So that's how I kind of chained all those things together. So similarly here, got my longe lat from my object that I created, which is this and this. And then I parsed that object, and I added my weather back to the object. So let me send this. So as you can see, for longitude and latitude, I can see, I actually just took this main weather description, main like clouds. I mean, I'm sure I could get a little bit more detailed in here. Like I could, tell everyone's wind speed and a lot of other information. But I just wanted to, keep it pretty basic. So I guess it's cloudy in Chicago today, which makes sense.
Seems common, yeah.
Yeah, and so then I kind of did that for all of my colleagues. So I have about 7 colleagues. Sean's, of course, one of them. Um, Sean's in New York. So I did that for all of them. And what you can do is, if you want to run through all of these, you can use the runner. So I ran through all of them. So I have Twitter, position stack, open weather, all of that for all of my colleagues. So if I run that, I can get everybody's like location, weather data. And now I have this final API, which I've built everybody's objects, like with their location, their weather. I did that. So here in my pre-request script, what I've done here is I actually parse everybody's data and I create a bigger array. So I create an array for all of my colleagues, like, Arlemi's on here, my colleague Ian's on here. So I got everybody's data, and this is a really great API. So this is a Postman Echo API. I think this is really useful. So if you want to just kind of echo back any data, what this API does is it just sends the data that you give it. So, for example, I wanted to send this array as a body, as a request body. So what I did here was I just created this request body as a variable, and I set this array, and then I set this request body as a variable, a collection variable. So now if you look at the collection, that's where this whole body exists as well. So what it does is I can read that collection variable from that body, and then if I echo it back, I just get a giant array with everybody's weather, location, launch, lat, and then in the tests, what I can do here is I can play around with some HTML, some CSS. I use this library called D3JS to basically build a map. So there's a lot of code in here, but basically what this does is it creates this beautiful visualization of a map, a D3 map, and it basically adds all the data from each of my colleagues onto that map. So here, what I'm doing is I'm parsing out all the data that I get from this API. I'm parsing everyone's name. I'm parsing everyone's location, latitude, longitude, weather. I have a little circle size that shows their marker, and I can add all of their data onto this map on this function right here, where you can get, where is it? Let's see. Yeah, it's hard to tell because everything is so zoomed in, but you can add like the brush stroke. There's a function in here that says pm get data. So there we go. So this function gets the data from this parse right here, and it maps it on top of the map. So when you click on, so this final thing right here, pm.visualizer, this sets that map template and it maps your data on the map. So then when you click on this visualize tab, what you can do is you can actually see a visual representation of your colleagues on a map here. So yeah, so that's kind of how you can build like interesting visualizations, as well as like chain different API requests together to build an interesting output. So that, I feel like that was my first idea of a first collection. I actually realized that there's obviously this way to do it where I can create all the individual objects, but I realized, like, with Postman, there's so many different functions that you can use to actually group this together. So I actually went about optimizing this even more. So I thought, like, okay, I did everything in all of these individual requests, but how can I optimize it so I can use like maybe only 3 Postman requests where I get everyone's data, get everyone's location, and then visualize. Then I thought, like, okay, do it in 2 requests, and then do everything in 1 request. So in this situation, I actually use this batch API called Twitter get users by username. So you can get a bunch of users together. So like, for example, here I have everybody's usernames. I'm thinking if we add an extra username, who should we add? Sean, do you have any ideas of people we should add? I was thinking, does Kin have a location on his?
I would
Oh,
imagine.
he has
Yeah.
Oakland, but I feel like that might be pretty close to Joyce. So let me
Yeah.
see. Is there someone else on our? We could do Arnaud.
Oh yeah.
What do you know? What is a handle? Do you remember his handle?
API handyman.
API handyman. There we go. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so let's do. Okay, so Arnaud is in Paris, so we can take his handle right here. By the way, if you guys don't know Arnaud, definitely follow Arnaud on Twitter. He's awesome. He like posts amazing things, and like we've had him on our live stream a few times as well, right, Sean?
Yeah. He's great. Just love having him on board. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
done Space Camp for us. He'll be speaking at an
yeah,
upcoming event we have.
yeah.
But totally worth the follow. Incredibly intelligent and valuable member of the community.
Yeah, so let's see if this works because I haven't tried this demo out yet. But we added API Handyman to the users, so I think that should be good. Okay, so there's that. So now it has all of us, and then it has also API Handyman. So let's see if when we send this request, so let's see what we get. So we get Ian. This is all of Ian's data, but we get Sean, we get Arlemy, we get everybody. Okay, let's see at the end. Okay, cool. So we got API Handyman, and we got his location, which is Paris, France. So if we visualize it, can we see where he is? Arlemy, Jan. Oh man, I think maybe something happened where it's reading maybe an older object, but you should be able to see like also his handle here as well. So, or maybe it's hiding somewhere, but yeah, we can try that out as well. Let's see if it's taking it from, yeah, I've like built this so many different times that it's using multiple different objects. So, okay, get user object. So users. Yeah, I think these objects have to get updated. So we'll try that out in another session. But essentially, his object will get updated, and you should be able to see like his thing right there. But yeah, I mean, essentially, oh, you know what it is? I feel like I have a couple of discrepancies with like all my users and because I haven't. That's another thing. You have to get a little bit creative when naming your variables. So there's that. But
Yes, users
there's
too.
one,
Yeah.
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 So that's another thing, you got to get a little creative. But so there's that workflow as well. So, but essentially this shows how you can map all of the users in one go using one request. Whereas here I had like I don't even know how many I had like 20. So I was doing it like individually. But the way that you do that, the way that I kind of did that, maybe it's easier for me to show on this one. But essentially what I've done is I've actually grouped multiple requests in a test itself. So here, what I do is I'm sending this API, this Twitter API with the Postman request, but I'm also sending the position stack API within the request itself. So, let's see. So for here, I'm also doing like I'm sending like the position stack API in this request using pm.sendRequest, and I'm also sending the weather API as well. So for those of you who are probably interested in optimizing it, that's another thing you can do with Postman. You can send multiple APIs within requests as well. So let me see if this works for this. So maybe it adds this one. Oh, there we go. There's Arno right here. So Arno's here in Paris. So that added that into that object. Nice. So cool. So yeah, I mean, if anyone is interested in doing this project as well, you can map multiple people on a map, and yeah, feel free to like fork this collection and find your own colleagues or favorite followers on Twitter and see where they're on a map. I think the final workflow I wanted to walk through was this using request workflows, which is very similar to what Sean had shown, where now, this is using PM send request, which is basically sending multiple API requests in overall in one request. That's one way to optimize, but another way to optimize is by creating a template. So like, for example, I'm doing a similar thing here. I'm getting all the users, and then I'm getting everybody's longitude and latitude. And what's happening here is that it's going to go through each of the objects in the array, and it's going to keep sending this get launch and location API like every single time until it reaches the last index in the array. So once it reaches that index in that array, so as you can see right here, this Postman set next request, this is the name of the request, lat/launch from location. So it's going to keep running this request until it reaches the last index of that array. And then once it has, it's going to go to the next request, which is getting everybody's weather. So like, for example, if I were to run this, you'll see that the latitude longitude request is being sent each and every single time. And then once it has everybody's lat and launch, now it's going to get everybody's weather. So it's going to run this third request every single time until I get everybody's lat launch, everybody's weather, and then I can go ahead and visualize similarly as well. So here we can get everybody's like location across the globe similarly. So that's another interesting way to use Twitter, to use different APIs, connect them together. And yeah, so essentially with my collection, I just wanted to dive deeper into like, here's my project, but how can I do this in multiple different ways? How can I create this using a template? How can I create this with like the send request function? And then how can I do this by working with objects? So yeah, if you're interested in learning more, I actually wrote a blog about it. So feel free to take a look at that blog and read more and like learn how to do it. Like there's other visualizations as well that people have done. Like this one's about like earthquakes around the globe. So they got everybody's, they got like a bunch of earthquake data and then mapped those on a map. I mean, you can essentially do this if you have some sort of API that's getting some sort of location. Essentially, like I use Twitter, but you can use another API that gives you a location. And then once you have that location, you can get the longitude and latitude. And then essentially, once you have launch lat, you can map almost just about anything on this particular D3 map. So, so that's kind of the idea here. So yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty, it's pretty cool. Like, yeah, just the ability to, visualize stuff and, take information from different APIs and have it all kind of like put into one spot.
Yeah.
I think, Pooja, the one last thing I want to show is just using Postman Flows for workflow. So I'm happy to pull up my screen quick and show folks there.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. So I will hide this and pull my screen up. So I am in this workspace here, and I'm going to just send it over. I'll zoom in. I will share this with everybody. this is the workspace I'm in. And what's cool about this, right? So if you're not familiar with Postman Flows, what it is I think Pooja may have talked about it earlier, but it is the low code, no code solution to building API workflows. Right. So everything we've done, we've used the typical Postman UI where we've entered the URL, click send, or like done it through Newman or a monitor, right? And so there is some sort of it wasn't particularly code heavy, but when Pooja added that information to visualize things, and I had info to like handle the environment updating, right? There were some things that you had to do there. So what's nice about Postman Flows is it allows you to do things visually with code or with like UI blocks, and allows you to kind of connect it in a way that's intuitive. So I dropped this link in the chat for everybody. So if you want to check out Postman Flows and see what we're doing, check it out. This is the example workspace, and a new feature is that you're actually able to fork a flow. And so that's super helpful because we can check out these examples, and you can use them on your own. So if you're not super zoomed in, you should see flows on this left-hand side. I have to click these 3 buttons because I'm very zoomed in, so it condensed it. So let's click flows, or you can just click from one of these. In this case, let's just go from sending a request. And I'm going to fork this basic one just to show like what kind of flows is and how it works. So I'm just going to fork this. We can kind of see what it is, right? It's like it sends a request. This is the CatFax one that we kind of talked about before. We actually saw that, I think. So let's just fork it. We'll call it live stream label, and I'll just put it into this workspace that I've already worked on. Okay, and while this loads, so I actually already did it. I've done it once, but I just wanted to show you that workflow. So right from here, right, I have this example flow. It's just going to send the request, and I can click start. And what it's doing is actually sending the request. I can look at the get CatFax, right? So it just, if I wanted to see more information on it, right, I can see some of the information on what it's doing, and I don't know where it added it. So this is something I'm not as familiar with, but yeah, if I click that, I can actually see the request, and this is what it's doing. It's the same thing as clicking this blue send button for this request.
So Sean, if you want to add like a terminal node to it, we can see how where the data gets outputted. So
yeah, right. So like right now it's like I'm running it, but I'm not like seeing anything. We can see that we have the check mark. So if I want to actually see what's happening, I'm going to add a new block. I click this little plus button, and a terminal block is going to be like it says what shows the output logs. And I'll zoom in one more time here. Right, so I'll click terminal, and now if I run it again, you can kind of see that it will send the request. We can see the visual cue that it's going on to the next request. And now I can see, if I want to see the terminal, I'm going to click this little button up here. And this is all the things that are happening. Right, this is the response being shown from the request. So this is super basic. Let's actually go back now. I'm going to do a more advanced example, because this isn't really an API workflow. I just wanted to introduce Postman Flows. So let's do one quickly that shows us. I'll just look at. We don't have to actually even run it, but if we're looking at now, I don't have. Okay. If I just want to see what this looks like, right? So here's an example for chaining requests. And again, I'm not going to run it, but you can kind of see the idea, right? The first thing it does is sends this request for getting random jokes. It'll then go off to the next thing and get dad jokes. And then the next thing it'll do is get Chuck Norris jokes. Right. And so we can really just see visually what's happening here. And let's look at something more like loops and lists, because now we're going to kind of see truly the visual nature of this request. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit just to see it better. Okay, right. So it searches for Lord of the Rings, sends a request, does some, it gets some list. Here, it looks like it's processing and looping over the list. I'm going to view the information. And, you know, I haven't actually looked at this a ton, so I'm not sure exactly all the things that are happening, but you can kind of see like the various stages in the, right, so it loops over the list of ISBNs found, finds detail and creates a list from them. So
right.
A cool visual representation of what's happening. And it's not just the representation, like this is actually the workflow that's happening and allows people to, you know, build it without having to do a lot of code.
I think like the idea here is like, instead of like writing scripts to do all of your pre-request, post-request stuff with flows, you know, there's already these pre-created little nodes that have some conditional logic. So if you kind of group them together, you can create out like a whole API workflow similarly as well. So this is great for like, you know, I think like this is we're trying to move towards like the low code, no code aspect of Postman as well. So we're trying to kind of be a little bit more vast when it comes to allowing more and more people to build interesting things and get the right data and build out projects without necessarily having to write like tons of scripts. So no, this is a cool feature as well. So I think we'll have to build some interesting things with this and show this off a little bit later as well. So
yeah, this is like a cool, I think it just looks cool. And it's, you know, clearly this like if else, right? So like if it's null, you know, do this. And if not, go do the other thing. And you can just kind of like the drag and drop functionality is super nice and helpful. So I think that's cool.
So we went over a lot today, Sean. We went over how to create flows. We went over the runner. We went over Newman. We went over flows. We went over monitors.
We covered some of our own individual projects that we did.
Some like workflows using variables and chaining requests. I think this is kind of like the essence of building workflows essentially with APIs. And, you know, I know we're kind of almost out of time, but essentially like if we do this at scale and automate this, is kind of this concept called APIOps. And so it's being able to scale and reuse some of these things. So I hope this provides a great starting point for you all when you're all getting started. Do you want to share any like last minute things, upcoming stuff that's happening?
Yeah. So for upcoming events, right, if you join this week, right, we have another stream next week at the exact same time. So Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And that's going to be, you know, if you're interested in flows, that's actually a great segue, because that is going to be basically one of our how we built it sessions. So Ian Douglas, developer advocate, will welcome on two folks that are very heavily involved with the flows building and creation and ideation here at Postman. So Samay and Saswat from Postman will be on to talk about, you know, basically how they built Postman Flows. So definitely hop in next week for that. And then we also have, if you're not familiar with our program called Space Camp, so that is you know, learning sessions geared towards, you know, specific users. Next week on Wednesday, so that will be June 15th, we have a session, and I'm going to drop the link in here, and I'll also put it in LinkedIn for everybody. Yeah, so next week on Wednesday, again, it's going to be kind of similar to some of the stuff we've done. It's going to be monitor and deploying an API. So if you were interested in monitors and deployment, or if you were interested in monitors, we talked about today, next week will be a great time for you to check that out. And if you happen to be in the San Francisco Bay Area, we are having our first ever in-person Space Camp session. So that's going to be awesome. I'll be there along with a bunch of other Postmanauts. Pooja will sadly not be joining us, but for very important, fun reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is next. Sorry, go ahead, Pooja.
I think that's happening in 2 weeks. So I just pulled up the meetup.
So June 23rd.
Yep. June. Yeah. So yeah, that'll be really fun. I feel like in-person events are kind of coming back to life now. So whoever is around SF, like, definitely be sure to check out this event. It's going to be pretty awesome. So yeah.
So thanks to everyone in the chat, right? So Dota Adarsh, sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Interesting session. Yeah, thank you for coming by. Everybody. So Pooja, we also do community shout outs. I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot. I forgot about it till just now. So is there any folks that you'd like to shout out?
Like just like any folks in our world, or just like in general?
Yeah.
I feel like I gave a lot of shout outs in this stream. I gave a shout out to Ian Douglas, who's pretty awesome. He's written a lot of really great blogs. He's doing some interesting space camp stuff with flows. And then also Arnaud, we gave a shout out to him as well. So, you know, we have some really great people that work here, and they're always showcasing some interesting things. I'm still learning from everybody. So yeah,
Sure.
I'm glad to kind of be part of this journey. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I'll shout out one of our audience members today who was super helpful with the hashtag. So Lionel, thank you for the game. I forget exactly what it was called, but whatever the game, Summer Game Fest.
Yes,
was super helpful. So that's my shout out. Yeah, I think this is as good a point as any to call it a day.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Sean. This has been fun with doing this with you. So yeah.
Same. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.